You know what? Never mind.
Tom Smalley's campaign is. Oh, we're live. Hi.
Oh.
And good evening. It is Wednesday, December 28th, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. It is 4 p.m. Chris Tronston time.
Yes.
I guess.
And Val's time.
Val is timeless, Chris, and you would know that if you'd given this thought. Anyway, as always, we like to give people an opportunity to come in, get settled, say hello. So if you're just joining us, please leave a comment. Let us know you're here, where you're from, and favorite Christmas or favorite holiday present this year. Favorite holiday present this year that you received. Hey, Dave, good to see you. We have a question from Badhan. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. We'll get to questions in a minute. Val is thank you, Dave. Val is timeless for sure. If you're just thank you. We all, I think those that celebrated did have a great Christmas. So if you're just joining us, please let us know you're here. Let us know where you're from and your favorite holiday gift that you received this year. Hey, Deleuze, good to see you. Felice is in the house.
Do we get to share our favorite holiday gifts?
What?
It sounds like you want to, Katie, so go ahead.
No, I actually was nervous.
Like, do I get to?
No, I felt obligated to share certain things because I'm like, oh, I have to share what Ethan gave me and not anybody else.
Actually, now that you brought it up, I want to hear what Ethan gave you. So
he gave me a really cool gift. I got a very cool. So Ethan and I, my big present is in 2 weeks. We're going to Disney and we're going to be like 12 years old and we're spending a week.
That's so awesome.
We're going to Disney World.
Oh.
The better one, Chris.
The other one's
yeah,
like
not
10
yours.
minutes from me, so I was like, if they better not be coming out and not letting me know. But
no, we would tell you. But we're going to Disney World for a week, so that's my Christmas present. And he got us. What?
What
were you saying?
No, go ahead.
And my big Christmas present too was the magic bands. If anybody's been to Disney and gets magic bands, and if folks know me, mine is pink with sparkles, and I'm very, very, very excited. So that's my big Christmas thing.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Selwyn's here. How's Australia? I guess it's tomorrow. Selwyn, Harmony, Virginia Beach. Val, what was your favorite holiday gift?
I'm thinking about it. I need a moment to think. So I'll come back to me. I'm thinking about Ethan.
Smalls.
Precious time with my family because I get 0 days off. So
that is the gift. Thank you for making us look bad, all of us. Appreciate it. Chris, what was your favorite holiday gift?
So I wish I would have brought it today, but this is my current briefcase, and as you can see, it looks sad because it's like I've had it for a while. So my mom and my sister got me a brand new briefcase for my office as a Christmas gift, and so it came in, and I just was rushing this morning. I didn't have time to like put everything in it, but. So now I'll be looking all nice and dapper at the office with a brand
have your initials on it.
You know what? You can get the initials on it. So I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to feel like, is that too pompous? Like, is that weird? Is that okay?
Get the initials.
Okay. I'll get the initials for sure.
And Liz just joined us. Hi, Liz.
Nothing like a little good peer pressure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, you guys. And I'm just giving a warning that like my life is chaos and that's just fun. And so I'm in a car, and if I leave, it's not because I don't love y'all. It's because I don't want you to deal with my chaos. So here I am.
Fair enough.
It's the holidays. We're talking about dealing with stuff during the holidays. So like, what better than just me showing you chaos in its true form?
Thank you for chaos.
I still don't know what my favorite gift was, Ethan. I'm scared to choose with having 4 kids and a bunch of grandkids, being that some of them might be watching.
Take precious time with your kids and grandkids.
Yeah, I'm agree with Tom.
There you go.
That's safe.
Ethan, what was your favorite gift?
Yeah, Ethan, you have somebody on here who wants to hear what your favorite gift was.
Yeah, I saw Katie like unmute herself and like jump forward as soon as I said that, and I was thinking, well, there's clearly one right answer here, so let's see.
Here is the right answer.
Katie got me. I've yet to open it, but she hasn't opened her gift. To be fair, Katie got me a really cool. I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like a digital word processor. It's small, and all you can do is write on it. No internet. and then you can connect Bluetooth and sync it to like your computer. So if I just want to get away and write books or screenplays or stuff like that, I can just write and not have any distractions. And then she got me a bunch of creative workbooks and things to help stimulate creativity and like exercises and things like that. So I'm really excited to dive into it. And yeah, it was really sweet, really thoughtful. Okay, so with that, welcome everyone. We are all your national and lead advocates, letting you know that it's the holidays and you are not alone. Hence, we're here for you for the holidays and here for ourselves. So thank you all for joining us. Let me just go over some quick housekeeping and then we'll jump into some Q&A. So this town hall is intended to serve as educational content. It is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The IOCDF is not a crisis hotline. If you are in crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, I haven't read in a week. Please go to your local or call 911 or 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. Also, we want to create a safe space as possible, be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. And a note, this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being recorded. So keep that in mind as you ask personal questions. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. So we have Katie, Valerie, Liz, Tom, and Chris. And we are here to support one another during this time. We know it can be, there's all this pressure around feeling wonderful and it's the holidays and we have to feel good and everybody's happy. And that's just not reality for lots of folks. So, we want you to know that you're not alone. We're here with you on this journey and wanted to make sure that we met up and at least had some opportunity to answer questions and let you know that we are here for you. So with that, let's dive into some questions. And we might throw in some little anecdotes along the way for sure. Michelle. Hi, Michelle. My fave gift was a book of pictures for my daughter's wedding. That sounds nice. OCD been a bit loud. Okay, so feel free to load the comments with questions. We'll answer, anything that's on your mind. Hi, Eric B. Good to see you. Deleuze, how are you? We do have a question from 5:13 p.m. I'm not sure if Badhan is on, but we can go ahead and ask it while the comment thread is loading with questions. So at 5:13 p.m., how to decide my action when I'm puzzled by the contradiction between my academic knowledge and some of my religious rules. I think I will throw this to our religious expert, Katie.
Yeah, and I'd love to pull in Liz and Chris on the clinical side with this too, but often for a lot of folks I work with navigating religious scrupulosity, there's this push and pull between what we know and what we think we know and what a rule is, but also what our OCD is saying and what it's pulling us towards and how to decide that particular action. And I always want folks to know it doesn't mean while we're navigating OCD treatment that we have to do anything to oppose our religious rules or to oppose those things that are significant to us. But if you're having trouble deciding your action because you're being pulled in two different directions, you might think about the things that you're being pulled to do because you're feeling guilt or you're feeling shame or you're feeling obligation or you're feeling like you have to do this one particular thing, right? Versus the things that you're doing along the lines of your faith as a part of meaning or a part of connection with the divine, whatever your faith tradition looks like. So I'm curious what specific kind of contradictions you might be experiencing, but I think this comes up a lot. I'll see folks with OCD who will say, well, I know this particular thing, but I feel like I'm supposed to know this other thing. There's all these pushes and pulls. But I would really encourage you in terms of deciding action to get into treatment, to really work with an OCD specialist and navigate exposure and response prevention, which would mean you're starting to lean into some of those things, even in your faith, that feel a little bit uncomfortable in favor of moving back towards your faith in a way that's value driven, as opposed to a way that's driven by fear from the OCD.
Liz or Chris, anything to add?
What I was just going to add clinically quickly is that when working with someone with scrupulosity, when Badhan talks about religious rules, I like to ask them a lot of times, like, where did these rules come from? And what they'll typically recognize as we have that conversation is these aren't rules that are brought on by a religious figure, a religious text. These are rules that have been created through OCD, and reminding the client that, look, like the OCD has targeted your faith because OCD knows it's very valuable to you and you'll defend it to the end. So it's creating these rules. And so, you know, just kind of how like OCD makes them up doesn't mean that we have to then follow them and recognize. So I always think it's important when we're first in the first phases of working with a client is really separating the OCD from faith, because I get it. Nobody's going to listen to me over their priest or pastor or rabbi, et cetera. And that's not the goal anyways. It's not about their faith. It's about the confusion and the uncertainty the OCD is providing. So that's one thing that you could try, Bad Hand, is like really recognizing, like, are these really religious rules? And if they are, then how come the rest of the people in your faith are able to practice them and still live fulfilled lives?
And the 80-20 rule along these lines is really, really helpful to think, what are 80% of the folks in your congregation doing or are able to do in this particular area? And to Chris's point, this comes up so much where we'll ask someone, well, is this actually a rule? And I hear from folks often, well, maybe not for others, but it is for me. And we often hold ourselves maybe to a higher standard even than others within our faith tradition.
I agree. Excellent points. I would have said the exact same thing. So yeah, let's keep cruising on down here. Oh, Carol got a Snoopy blanket. Sorry, just reintegrating. We asked the original question, what was your favorite holiday gift? So I'm just kind of looking through. Erica got some noise canceling headphones, which is awesome. I love Snoopy though. Katie and I watched Charlie Brown Christmas on Christmas Eve. So
that makes me so sad.
Well, yeah, we realized he has some psychological things going on.
For sure, no doubt.
I turned to Katie, I'm like, he's depressed.
But he actually, if anybody hasn't watched it, on the flip side, I felt very seen by that, because a lot of it was him recognizing, we kept hearing him say, I don't feel like I'm supposed to feel this way during the holidays, or everyone else is feeling this particular way, and this is how I'm feeling. And I actually felt really, really seen throughout watching Peanuts, where it was, wait, this is even kind of normalized in a cartoon that I watched growing up.
For sure.
Honestly, true, yeah.
So Kayli, oh, hi, Carol and Jenna. Good to see you. Kayli has a question for Val. I have a non-holiday question for Miss Valerie. Miss Valerie, would you please remind me of the name of your special OCD awareness nail polish?
Oh, my special? It's just a regular until there's no stigma. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I don't have a name,
Amanda, but yeah, it's just, I think they're just asking about, like, what do you have your color and what it means, and what do you?
Well, I wear the color teal because it's the national global recognizable color for OCD, and I specifically wear it on my toes because it was a reminder for me as a woman of color and of age and of faith that was suffering from OCD to keep moving forward and not to allow myself to get stuck in one place, because I felt too that we're still a faceless community in a sense. So that's why I wear the color teal, because it's more of a personal just a personal little thing between myself and my OCD head that I'm going to keep moving forward. So if I get discouraged, I just look down at my feet.
And Val, as your business,
but I'm open to names.
I was going to say, Val, as your business partner,
that would be great.
We need to trademark a certain shade of teal, get it in every nail salon in America for that week, and trademark it.
That would be great.
I have a lot of expansion ideas on that business, but we'll talk offline. Duluth at 7:10 p.m. I'll throw this out to Tom, but we'll start with Tom. What's something that's really helped each of you personally with letting go of the past and future, for that matter, and living life in the present moment to the fullest? Great question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the main thing is, and I'll steal kind of Katie's mantra, is kind of like sticking to your values and what you value. Whether it's, for me, it's been athletics or training and that kind of realm. And then for some, it's creative arts. For some, it's their faith. And so, like, just understanding kind of what you value the most and understanding that you don't want OCD to ever take a hold of those things.
I love that, Tom. Liz, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is hard, and I think I guess one of the questions I'm not totally sure about from the question is like, when we're saying the past, are we talking about like OCD stuff that's trying to hold us on, or are we talking about kind of like life things that we need to grieve a little bit? And Ethan and I have talked a lot about this, that there is kind of this process of like, when you get better, you also have to grieve kind of what you lost for so many years from when you were struggling, right? Whether it's your college age years, your teenage years, your adulthood, right, career, and these things that there is this important piece of kind of grieving like what could have been or how it could have been different. But I think for me, what I've learned in life in general is that it's just never helpful to drive and look in the rearview mirror the whole time. It's dangerous, it's safe, and it keeps you stuck behind you versus what's ahead of you. And this is actually something that was a really big piece for me in recovery, where I think I spent a lot of time in the why. Why do I have OCD? Why do I have to struggle? Why me? What did I do to deserve this? Like, I don't understand this. And I really had to shift to like, okay, this is like my situation. These are the cards I was dealt. And instead, can I figure out, okay, what am I going to do about it? And how am I going to move forward? And how am I still going to have that values-based life that we're talking about? And can that be the driving force versus what was in the past? Because the reality is like, we can't change the past, but we hopefully can change the future.
I love that. Chris or Val, anything to add?
Yeah, I have a thought when the question came up. It reminded me of how I allowed OCD to not, wasn't able to fly for almost 30 years. And I had never had a bad experience. And this was pre-diagnosis, so I didn't know what was going on. But my son is a flight attendant, and I have two sister-in-laws as flight attendants. So my family was gone all the time, and they would leave me. They would go to family reunions, or they would go here and there. And then finally, a couple of years ago, they bought me a ticket to Hawaii. We're going on a family trip. I didn't know. And so I had like a 2-day window to decide. But bottom line, once I made the choice to go there and being in that present moment with family, it made me realize what all I had lost that I couldn't get back. And so I try to push myself now when I'm faced with having to travel or do those sort of things, that to remember that, tomorrow will be gone. We only have today. And so that kind of helps me. It's hard, and I allow myself to be afraid and all of those things, but it has helped me. That experience of visually seeing, what all I had missed and couldn't get back helped a lot.
I love that, Val. Chris.
Yeah, what I was going to add is actually one thing that helped me when I went to my very first IOCDF conference. One of the really difficult things I had with OCD is I would question any decision I made. And I remember as a kid, those choose your own adventure books, I hated them because I would read ahead and see what all the different options were. And so I'd make a choice. And then part of my OCD was to sit there and kind of be in my head and fantasize almost about what would have happened differently if I made the other choice. And I was at one of the first conferences I went to, and I remember it was like a young kid, probably like, 10, 11. And I was talking about it I was in a support group at one of the conferences, and he said, "Oh, I used to have that." And what helped me is I asked myself, like, has anybody invented time machines yet? And if the answer is still no, then it means I can't go back in time and fix it. So I got to just move forward. And it was so profound for me. And it literally was one thing that I helped kind of remind myself and help prevent me from going in the past. And then lastly, what I wanted to add is one of the things that really helped me is I did martial arts after treatment, and we spent a lot of focus on presence, mindfulness, the here and now. And what I recognize is that's where my power is. OCD can only frighten me about the future, or it can bring up some scary stuff from the past, but OCD never happens in the moment. Nobody is ever like, I'm hitting someone with my car as we speak, or I am attacking a person. It's always like I might or I might have. So ask yourself, what's the most important thing happening to you in that moment, and engage with that. And anything that's going to happen in 2 seconds from now or 2 seconds ago, it's not anything we can do about it. So move forward, be in the moment.
Love that. All right. I have some thoughts.
Can I add one thing to that too?
Oh, well, sure.
No, I love what everybody said, and especially that embracing the moment. And Chris, especially that piece of OCD isn't happening in the now. It's about that future, that past component.
Yeah, nobody ever comes and is like, I am dying right now.
Yeah.
I am going to hell right now. It's always like it will happen or it happened, right? So
I think that's so spot on for what we're talking about. And I just wanted to add in terms of letting go of the past, from the faith side, I see people all the time that say, well, how do I stop being upset about this thing that happened with my OCD? How do I get rid of all of those bad feelings so I can move forward? And I think part of that is, at least in my experience, I spent so much time feeling like I had to somehow get over my past in order to move forward to the future. And it was this space of actually allowing myself to grieve and to hold those things that were really tough while still being here in the now and still taking steps towards the future. So I'll tell folks, and this was a big piece of my own life, both with OCD and with other personal stuff, of I can in this moment say like, yeah, that was really hard and it really sucked and I'm really frustrated. And yet I can still be here in the now and take steps forward. So I think for me, I was spending so much energy trying to let go of the past that it prevented me from being in the present, while we can hold all of those feelings, all of those emotions, but also be here now and take steps towards this big, beautiful life ahead.
Well said, Katie. With that, I definitely won't weigh in. She went back for seconds. 7:10 p.m. Betsy. I've been challenging my OCD with more strength than ever before. That's awesome, Betsy. However, New Year's, birthdays, holidays, special days are quote unquote special to OCD. I want to do everything right and have good thoughts, especially on NYE, so that I don't tarnish, contaminate the new year. Any advice? Everybody has advice. So I'm going to start with Val.
Wow, I've been challenging. I think, like I say, just to allow yourself to be okay with struggling, but to try to push yourself forward anyhow. I'm going in my new year. Can you see my t-shirt? It says thankful, and I'm trying to embrace every aspect of, I don't want to say living with OCD, but rising up to meet OCD. I'm thankful in a sense because it allows me to continue to live my life and not miss out so much, but I also allow myself to pull back. Like I've done this, I can get this far and I'm going to chill out for a minute. So I don't know. I just try to keep moving forward as much as I can, but without guilt or judgment. That's what I'm learning too.
Liz, from a clinical perspective, what are some takeaways in what Betsy's written here?
Yeah, remember, more the reason to do it, right? OCD is going to try to attack the things that are that feel the most important, the biggest, the things that we want to make sure don't get tainted, right? Important memories, important trips, whatever it might be. That is more the reason. Let's just ruin it up front. So like, let's just ruin New Year's Eve at like 12:01 versus waiting till midnight, the next day or whatever it might be. Because once it's ruined, once we feel contaminated, once we've leaned into our trigger, OCD can't live anymore. But if we're debating at all with OCD of like, okay, I want to try to keep it safe or try to still make it good, it is going to keep being there and it is going to get louder and it is going to continue to have a sure chance that it will ruin and impact those special occasions. So remember, the way you actually keep special occasions special and we keep OCD out is by letting OCD in early on. The more we try to keep it out, the more it will continue to stay there. We can pretty much guarantee it will impact those special days.
Well said, Liz.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, Liz.
I think another thing is like, nothing's going to ruin the year more than dealing with OCD every day and letting it take over your life.
Simple but true. That's pretty much sums it up. 7:10 p.m. OCD warrior. Is it normal to have thoughts that seem to confirm my worst OCD fear, but they don't appear like intrusive thoughts? They don't appear out of nowhere, i.e. could be part of an internal dialogue. May need some clarification, but I'll toss this to Chris initially.
Yeah, I mean, what happens is I think people, one thing I always talk to my clients is like, how does the O in OCD turn into the C? So we know the O stands for obsessions, but the C is how you deal with that obsession. So I think sometimes people think that the obsession lasts for like 4 hours. It really doesn't. If my OCD is around drinking this drink, and the person making it looked a little shifty, what if they put something in it? That quick conversation is the O. The C starts to become this internal dialogue as the person says. So if I'm spending 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours later, still in my head running through, okay, when they're making the smoothie, did I ever see them touch it? And did they move it? Did I look away? Was I looking the whole time? That's no longer really like the intrusive thought that originally happened at 8 a.m. when I got the smoothie. Now it's just this internal dialogue. It's this conversation I'm having with my brain. And the mistake that we make when we do that is we take a very active approach. It's almost like being a detective and trying to get an answer. And as all of us on this panel can say, we'll never get an answer that makes OCD happy enough. And if we happen to stumble upon that answer, OCD is just going to throw doubt into something else, and we'll be back on that. So what I tell people is once it's a C, that's a compulsion. And the great news is we have power of not engaging in that. So if you're having an internal dialogue, recognize what is the core fear that OCD is trying to get you out of or fix and save. And what if you took a passive approach and just abandoned it? What if you stopped having that back and forth? The dialogue can only happen if there's two people. And so it's really about pulling yourself from that dialogue. I think sometimes people don't realize how much they're adding to it internally. They feel like it's still something coming at them. But at that point, one thing I always tell clients is there's a disorder in the DSM called rumination disorder. It has nothing to do with OCD. It's actually children that eat food, chew it up, spit it out, and then re-eat it like a bird. So I like clients to think of that visual when they're having that internal dialogue. You're not getting any new information, which somebody without OCD will only think about something if they have new information. You're just chewing up the same information, spitting it out, and chewing it again. And that's why it feels like an internal dialogue.
Well, that's gross.
Yeah. But it's a great visual. And that's what people are doing.
Totally stigmatize anybody with that disorder that's currently watching. I apologize.
Well, luckily it's for mostly children. So if there's a 5-year-old right now, they hate you.
Yeah. So on that note, does anybody have anything else to add before we move on? Excellent. Grace, good to see you, Grace, or see your words anyway. Hope you're having a good holiday season. It's 11 p.m. Are there any gaps that immediately come to mind when it comes to OCD related advocacy? If so, what are they, and what do you all hope to maybe see changes in the next decade or so per se? Great question. Start with Tom.
I think for me, it really it's just more advocates. I think what we're doing with our advocate program is so huge. What Ethan and Liz have spearheaded, but just letting everybody have a voice and providing that voice for everybody and understanding that there's so many different ways to advocate and so many different avenues. And I hope more people are able to kind of talk about their stories and different challenges they face. So I think just having more advocacy out there is the main thing.
I love that, Tom. And Grace, and for anybody watching, we all sort of have we're obviously passionate about education, stigma reduction, access to treatment, effective, affordable treatment. But within that work, we sort of all have our passions, if you will, so I think, our immediate answers are, what we're extremely passionate about. Chris is very passionate about the LGBTQ community. I almost said the DBT community, but the BDD community as well. Valerie is very passionate about faith and diversity. I'm sure I can let everyone speak for themselves. But Katie's obviously intersection of faith and mental health, and that you can actually dive into your treatment as well as embrace your faith and what's important to you from a faith tradition. I would say for me personally, I think reducing stigma around men and OCD, which I know Tom, and mental health, Tom is working very, tirelessly with that, with anxiety in athletes. But for me, diversity remains, I think, one of the biggest hurdles that we have to, specifically within the OCD community, that we have to continue to aggressively chip away at. It isn't for a lack of trying by the IOCDF, but it's a steep hill. And I think, we really need to continue to work harder But hopefully the OCD conversation becomes the next big wave in the next 10 years, as other movements have taken shape and propelled forward. So I think we're doing a good job in getting the word out there, and hopefully it'll continue to grow exponentially. Did anybody else want to say anything that they were passionate about?
Yeah, hi, Grace. Good to see you. For me, I don't know. I have been so bothered the last couple of weeks behind the suicide of Twitch. And even though it was someone I was familiar with as a TV personality, I was taken by surprise how much it affected me. And also not only his suicide, but also the response of people, like, holding the wife responsible. Why didn't you know it? All of this stuff. And it just weighed so heavily on me, because I think being a person of color, a Black mom with Black sons, husbands and all that, that I know oftentimes my focus is just for the women of color, but that kind of put me in a different headspace, that opened my mind up that men, I say, are really struggling, and especially within the Black communities. And so I've been kind of working in my head what or how I want to incorporate that into my advocacy this year. But it just bothered me beyond what I anticipated it to be. And like I said, it wasn't like I knew him as a personal person, just doing him as a fan, but it was all the other stuff that followed, the reaction that just showed me how much lack of knowledge there is in communities, of not knowing what OCD and all these anxieties are about, and how much the stigma still remains. But for me, it was like the light bulb went off. I just can't operate with women, because it seems like the men are the harder place to pierce and to get rid of that stigma. So just sharing that, like I said, I was totally caught by surprise. I mean, I was tearful. I cried. It's like, I don't know this guy. Where's all of this stuff coming from? But for me, I think it's because I still feel the lack of participation within my communities, and it saddens me.
Yeah. Thank you, Val. I think there are a lot of things that come up as to why I was hit very similarly. If I know Chris did have a personal relationship with Twitch, so if you feel comfortable talking a little bit about why you think his passing resonated so strongly with so many people, and maybe give some insight if you're comfortable, Chris.
Yeah, no, I've known Steven, Twitch. I've known him for over a decade, him, his wife, Allison. I saw him, his wife, Allison, and then their son, Maddox, all summer and fall behind the scenes at So You Think. And I've seen him at multiple events as well. And I got woken up in the middle of the night from a close friend who knew Twitch as well, sharing the news with myself. And, I knowing him for so long, knowing his family, knowing his wife, they're such good people. It hit me so hard, obviously, on a personal note. And then taking myself out of like actually knowing him and knowing his family and seeing him multiple times and having friends that just spoke to him, I think it also hit me is because as a psychologist, as a therapist, I just saw him a month and a half ago, and there was no signs, and
Yeah.
so I think the hardest thing, Val makes some really good points. It's like we were so quick as a society to point blame, right? Like, how could he do this? He was so happy. How could his wife not know? How could his mom not know, etc.? We don't do that when someone has an ailment with a physical condition. So there's something that we still think in this society that if it's a mental condition, there's some kind of blame or choice. And I think that that's one thing on a larger scale, just outside of OCD, but mental health in general. And like Val was saying, we don't give a space for heterosexual males in the United States to experience mental health conditions. They're told to man up, to not cry, to not show emotion, to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and then they internalize a lot of things and don't feel like they have permission to showcase. And as Val said, you have the addition of him being a Black male, you have addition of being a celebrity and somebody that entertains, and now suddenly the idea of reaching out to others and to open up about internal struggles is absolutely off limits. So we as a country need to have a wake-up call, not just from Twitch, but all the people we'll lose this year to suicide, and just have a really serious conversation and wonder how come we're not providing space for people to ask for help without judgment.
Yeah, just to piggyback of what Chris was saying, I think, I think I've been in that situation with, being told to be pulled up, pull myself up by my bootstraps, more than 3 times at this point in my career, in my field. And so, I could think back to the conference when I told, I was sitting at a table with Chris and a few of our, OCD community, friends, and I was telling them about the situation with the coach that, was abusing me. And I remember, explaining that situation and then being like, are you serious right now? Like, this is actually happening. And so for me, it was so pushed on me to man up and kind of, suck it up that I almost didn't think anything of it. And that's kind of, I guess, from a non, it's not really an OCD related advocacy piece, but from a mental health advocacy piece, I think that's what we're pushing for with anxiety in athletes. I think that's what we're pushing for, in a lot of different places, is to, make those subjects and that conversation for males, at least a little bit more open every day, because it definitely takes a toll on people, and they do internalize it, and we're losing people because of that.
Yeah, one last thing I want to say is, like, I feel, obviously, Tom, when you opened up about your story, it's like that's another, time that society has failed you, right, as a person with your mental health. And as a society, we absolutely failed Twitch, and we failed his family. We didn't provide a space for him to feel comfortable enough to open up. And one thing that I've been internally struggling with is, because I think all of us get really angry and blame, and that's obviously how I felt the first couple of days. But I think for me, it just renewed advocacy. And just going back to Grace's question, it's like, obviously, I think Ethan handled the question well, in the sense of, like, diversity, I think, is number one key. But I think additionally to that is just, how do we get all of the voices to kind of channel in general, to make sure that people don't feel that that's an option. There's other choices people have before them, but I think a lot of people feel like they don't have other options, and that's why it continues to happen. And we got to figure that out for sure.
No, and thank you, Chris. And that's, talking about this, it's how I got into advocacy to begin with, was losing someone in my life who came from a faith tradition where they didn't feel like they could open up about their mental health, and they felt like that was the only option. And having someone that I cared deeply about die by suicide and not feel like they could talk about that in their faith community was one of the reasons I started talking about my own story as a minister navigating mental health struggles, because I feel like folks need to know we can have these conversations regardless of your faith or your culture, your race, your gender, whatever that looks like, that these conversations need to be happening. So back to Grace's question, the gaps are really across the board in so many different communities of just getting to have these conversations. And I wanted to note, yes, in faith, I could say things all day long about the Hindu community and the Muslim community and the Jain community and how we need to talk about scrupulosity more than we're doing right now. But I also just want to note on the positive front that the change and the gaps that are being filled are beginning to be filled because of all of you who are on here right now. I think about even this week, a stigmatizing article that came out in Psychology Today, and then a New York comic that came out that was kind of inappropriate towards OCD. And the community got an apology from the author of the article, because so many people in the OCD community immediately responded and stood up, whether it was on their platforms or through writing emails, writing letters, whatever that looked like. And I saw the same thing with the comic, where I finally saw the comic like 3 days later, and literally hundreds of advocates that I've never been in contact with were commenting on this and sharing what real OCD is, how we shouldn't be ashamed of having OCD, but that evidence-based treatment is possible and that we need to stop stigmatizing it. And I just want folks to know too, on the positive front, that there are still gaps, but these gaps are being filled in because of each of you and because of your passions. And we need you as a part of this journey and this conversation.
Well,
And Katie, you said
One last
something.
little thing, kind of feeding off Katie. That was how I looked at it also. It is opening, his death is opening up the conversation. It's our job to keep the conversation going. And that's where the struggle is, because all of us, our whole advocacy is based on hope. You know, we know we can get better. We know there's a future. So that was the positive, just a little positive thing that I was able to receive out of that. And the best way to honor him, like you say, is to keep living. You know, keep advocating.
Tom?
No, I know we've been on this for a while, but I just want to say, Katie, you said something that I really that I learned the other day, not learned for the first time, but you said died by suicide. I think that that word choice is really, really crucial when talking about suicide. Obviously, I'm not a clinician, but you know, I think when you say committed suicide, that leaves that choice that we talk about, right? And you know, mental health conditions aren't a choice, right? So I think you know, using the correct verbiage, like we talk about all the time, you know, not using mental health disorders as adjectives, but saying died by suicide, you know, it that small change in verbiage really does make a difference too.
Good point, Tom. Thank you. And thank you, Grace. It's a great question. We could probably do a whole town hall. We definitely could do a whole town hall on that subject. So Duluth, 7:12 p.m. Do y'all think hyperfixation or the future and hope on the future and hoping for something better and then coming back and feeling like the present is undesirable, problematic for OCD recovery? Since Duluth said y'all, I'm going to toss this to Liz. Liz, any thoughts?
So tell me about the stigma around y'all. It's just because I'm from Texas.
Yes, but I am.
I'm good. I embrace it, you guys, and say it every day. And I even text it. But I do think that Apple needs to figure out how to not try to autocorrect y'all, because we really do think it's a word and should be used frequently. So anyway.
But Grace, we're adding that to our advocacy, just FYI.
Yes, that is a piece of Liz's advocacy that's important. This is tough. You know, I think that in general, listen, anxiety only lives in the past and in the future. It doesn't live in the present. So is it important to have goals, to have hopes, to have dreams, to have greater good, to be hopeful? Absolutely. That's what allows us to push forth in the present, especially if the present is difficult. At the same time, if we're so fixated on the future, you know, and so fixated on needing something better and not being satisfied with what we have or not being able to live in the present, won't it rob us of the joys of being able to be here? So I think, again, whether we're talking about the past, whether we're talking about the future, we can't erase both and pretend that like we're just only going to be present. We're never going to think about one or the other. But where's the moderation? Where's the middle ground? Where is living in the beauty of being excited about tomorrow, but also seeing what today has to offer, right? And living in it in that moment. Living in the moment doesn't mean you literally have to spend all of your days and moments living in the moment and never thinking about tomorrow or what's next or goal setting, right? It's not, things don't have to be black and white. The goal across the board is, can we practice flexibility and can we lean into that?
I used to ask my therapist, you know, what if the present sucks, that I don't necessarily want to be mindful, you know, and present minded. I was like, what if it's a really crappy present at that moment? You know, it was like, then can I exist in the future? And so I resonate with this question, but you know, for me, I really like to, I've been yet to be proven wrong in me saying that, you know, from pain, there's always a silver lining in whatever it is. There's been, I can identify every time I was struggling, every time there was something difficult, whether it was OCD or just life related, there was a silver lining that followed, whether it was immediately or even years after, that it clicked and it made sense. And I would challenge anyone to say that, you know, there isn't a silver lining when things hit. And I like to, so when I kind of come back to a present that isn't necessarily as desirable as I want, you know, I always try to remind myself that something good will come from whatever I'm feeling in this moment or experiencing in this moment, whatever that is. And I may not know what it is for a while, but me getting through this in this moment will result in something better for myself. And I like to hold that tight because it makes those present moments a little bit more palatable. So any other thoughts? All right, let's jump on to, I love this question, Brooke. At 7:12 p.m., as an advocate, I felt overwhelmed with the holidays and trying to maintain writing my blog and posting on social media. Does this happen to you? Recommendations for self-care and advocacy. Such a great question. I'm going to toss it to the panel. I just want to say that I think the first lesson I learned in advocacy was you don't stop having OCD just because you become an advocate, right? And becoming an advocate in whatever capacity doesn't mean that you are not allowed to struggle or suffer or have, it doesn't mean. And I remember like when I first was like selected to do the keynote speech in 2014, it was like 2 months away and I was really struggling. And I went to my therapist and I said, I can't give the speech. She was like, why not? I'm like, because I'm having a hard time right now. I have to, like, how can I have a hard time and be able to tell people, individuals with OCD that this is how I got out, and it's not black or white. We are allowed, and we all talk about our struggles and our own day-to-day struggles in life with OCD. So I'll let the gang talk about, self-care and advocacy and how to weave those two together. But that's the first thing, that both can exist simultaneously for sure. I'll start with Katie. She's nodding pretty.
No, I mean, I just, and Brooke, I've been following the things that you've been doing in advocacy on social media and beyond. And just want to say you are doing awesome things and raising awareness and just such a great job creatively. And it can be really overwhelming through the holidays. This is something, doing advocacy via social media has been new. Oh, I see my cat's tail. Weird. Okay. Doing advocacy via social media has been kind of a new thing for me over the last year. And it has been a learning lesson where over some holidays, I felt like I still have to do 2 posts a day. I have to get this podcast up. I have to do this. People are struggling. And recognizing, to Ethan's point, that I still have OCD too, and that I still need a break too, has been really affirming. And I start to realize when I'm saying to myself, I have to get this post up or I have to finish this content, that it might be a good time for me to step back and to take a break over the holidays, as opposed to the feeling of I get to do this advocacy or I get to create this content. Brooke, I would encourage you just to give yourself space to take a step back when you need to, but also to engage in ways that feel meaningful and helpful to you, but so that it never feels like a pressure kind of component. I think advocacy is meaningful in it being fun and in it feeling like we get to do it with those around us. I had another point I was going to make, but yeah, that's what's coming to me right now. But awesome job with all that you do and just giving yourself permission to take a step back at points where you need to. It doesn't have to be all the time.
Yeah, it's the plane analogy, right? It's like you have to put on your oxygen mask first before you can help others. And I know for those of us, it can easily feel like we're somehow abandoning the community or being irresponsible to those we love and care about because we have to take care of ourselves first. And it really is okay to turn to yourself and say, what do I need in this moment, to be able to then move forward and do what you love from an advocacy perspective. Tom.
Well, no, and I was just going to say, I remember the thing I was going to say that slipped from my brain. It's also, and y'all might relate to this, I really respect folks that I see on social media and advocating and creating content that actually put something up and say, hey, I'm taking a break right now for self-care. It's actually really inspiring to me. And when I was really struggling, it gave me permission sometimes to do the same of, ooh, if this advocate that I look up to is taking that time to take a step back, maybe I can engage in self-care too, even if it's really hard. And Brooke, for you to hear, maybe taking that step back and even saying, you know what, I'm going off of social media or off of my blog for 3 or 4 days, you might actually open the door for someone else to engage in self-care.
I know for myself, this holiday season happened to be a little rough for myself personally, only because I found myself obsessing over just the idea of pleasing everybody. I had hosted 50 people for Christmas at my house. And
I didn't get an invite.
alongside of that, I also took responsibility to do the shopping for my church kids, which I love. I mean, but I found myself, I realized I put myself a bit off more than what I could chew, not intentionally, but I just found myself being triggered. I was obsessing. I had these themes for everybody, like the grandkids, Pokemon. So anything that I saw that had to do with that, I had to go get it. And I just found myself recognizing that I needed to pull back, that I was getting in that danger zone that we can get in. And so I asked for help. I called my sister-in-law and it was like, hey, I need help with wrapping. I need help with, I called my daughter, I need help with arranging, the house and all the little stuff that was causing me all this anxiety. And then finally, I got to the point where it is what it is. I end up going to the dollar store, buying any kind of bags, whether they said birthday or, whatever, to help myself get rid of all of the anxiety or the stress over having to have everything.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Val seems to be having technical difficulties.
No, she just talked really fast too.
Let's see if it catches back up. Val, can you hear us? We might be seeing video from the past. Oh, I feel terrible.
It looks like she had some really good things to say too. She was on a roll.
Yeah. I don't know if we can. Well, I don't. Okay. I felt terrible. Oh, that's the worst.
It hurts my heart because
I know, it really does.
passionate.
Because she was on a roll and she was just
it's like, where did you lose me in the cell phone call? It's like, you said, well, and then I missed all that. All right, we'll let Val get back on.
I can just, I think all of our advocates have said really, really good things. But I think, something that Felice said in the comments is give yourself grace. I think that's a huge thing is understanding that you're kind of, oh my God, she's back. Thank goodness.
Was I mic'd the whole time?
You're muted a long time, Val.
There was a good piece of it where we couldn't hear anything you said, and we felt terrible. It was like
you were on a roll too.
I was just pouring my heart out.
You were so passionate.
No,
yeah,
you
had it.
You played.
The hands were moving.
You played a classical song on the piano, and then this. And,
yeah, I just happened to look down and seen I was muted. It was like, oh dang. So on to the next.
No, go ahead, Liz. You were about to say something.
No, I was just commenting, Val, on how passionate you were about this. But I loved what I think was the main point, is that you stopped and asked for help from different people. But I know the point of today's live stream is for us to talk about the holidays and to talk about the impact anxiety and OCD can have. And I think the biggest advice I can give anybody across the board is just don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell someone when you need it or when you're struggling. And it is just so difficult for all of us that we could all practice that. Because to me, that's the biggest piece of self-care is asking for help. And sometimes that help is taking a break and setting a boundary and telling people about that or not, right? But don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, I love that, Liz. And I just want to point out Harmony's comment at 7:30. This is my first time seeing a woman of color advocating for OCD. Thank you for bringing more representation to the community, Valerie. So,
you're welcome.
Yeah, Valerie's a special person. I think I lost my place in the questions scrolling down to that, but that's okay. Well worth it. And thank you for all the kind comments. It's our pleasure to be here. So thank you for being here with us. Time for a couple more questions. Deliana at 7:27 p.m. I stress out a lot about believing in God, and I have trouble sometimes. And due to this, I have a lot of fearful thoughts about hell. What do you suggest I should do? Let's start with Liz from a clinical perspective, and then we'll jump over to Katie from a faith perspective.
Yeah, I think that I'd want to know a lot more around where do these thoughts come from and what are they rooted in, and is it based in scrupulosity? Is it general curiosity? Are we trying, right? Like all these different things. But the biggest question I'd want to ask you, which I think Katie's going to say something very similar, is I would want to know, if you didn't have OCD, if you didn't have anxiety, what would you want to be doing? Are you maybe avoiding church now, but you wish you could still go to church if that's your faith? Are you avoiding, reading about your faith or engaging with your faith in different ways? Because I want to get you back to that. What we don't want to happen is to let fear make decisions for us, or to let fear take us away from things that we want to be doing or that we otherwise might be enjoying or engaging in. And so that's really what I want you to think about, is what do I want to get back to, or what is my fear or anxiety taking me away from, and how can we start living that way? And once we know what that is, then we start approaching the OCD to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I want to like snap for everything Liz just said of, yeah, where is, again, the fear, what are we moving away from that is significant to us, and what could we be getting back to? And I also just, again, would want to know a lot more about your faith tradition and about what this looks like. But really, one of the things I know that comes up with this is, I always hear folks say, well, what does it mean about me that I'm having these questions to begin with, or that I'm having these thoughts, that I'm stressing out about believing in God, or that I'm worried that I'm going to hell? Well, it must mean something. And I want to just remind y'all that we're talking about OCD here, where OCD, regardless of the content, is latching on to the things that are the most significant to you. And it's because your faith is significant that OCD is attached to this right now in this moment. So I think it's important to know that it's not because of a lack of faith, or it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's OCD attaching to something that just happens to be really important to you. And that by engaging in treatments like exposure and response prevention, as Liz was talking about, we can start to help you get back to a space where you're engaging with faith from a space of hope and meaning and connection and joy, as opposed to fear and anxiety, or moving away from the things that you would typically be doing.
Well said. Thank you both. Amanda, we have time for one more question, and I'm going to go around with the group and leave you with some final thoughts. Also, if you jump off, because I just want to say that I'll announce this, we'll be back with you next week as well, the same group, to start the year off wrong or right. We really don't know, and we're okay with that. But so if you don't get your question answered tonight, definitely join us next week. And I'll give you more information about that toward the end. Just want to throw that out. Amanda at 7:27 p.m. I love this question. Been trying to challenge my OCD, but been struggling with a loved one accommodating it out of their inability to handle the stress of seeing me struggle. Any thoughts on the best ways to help educate them? First, kudos on recognizing this yourself and wanting to do something about it. That says how far potentially you've come in your own journey. I'm going to turn this over to Chris.
Yeah, what I always tell people is to find the best medium that somebody learns from, right? So we know that there's articles, there's videos, there's podcasts, etc. So the first thing I do, Amanda, is figure out the loved one, what's the best way that they learn? Let's say they're a podcast person. It's finding podcasts on the harm of family accommodation. Obviously, family accommodation makes sense in a lot of other disorders. Your loved one broke their leg, or they're going through cancer treatment and might need help getting access to food. But in our disorder, it actually does the very opposite and empowers the OCD and weakens your belief in yourself that you can handle it. So first, I would say education, education, education. So they really understand clinically why it's not helpful. I know I run like a free family and loved ones group. So if that's the way, find a loved ones group that they can attend in your area. Once they've gotten some education, if you're finding that they're still having a really difficult time seeing you handle stress, and I can tell you as a clinician, there's some family members that I have done more education on OCD than any other person on the planet, and they still give into accommodation, then it's going to be your responsibility. It's going to have you really starting to recognize, like, okay, how can I handle this in a way that I don't incorporate this family member or this loved one, because inevitably they're going to give in. And so it's really holding boundaries for your own care, and it's making sure that you hold the line. So I tell my clients, I'm like, if your loved one will just not stop accommodating, you hold that boundary. And so that's typically going to be what's going to happen if your loved one just refuses to see you struggle. The thing I always tell parents is, I'm like, or loved ones, is if we're asking the person with OCD to handle discomfort, they have to be willing to handle some discomfort as well.
Anything else? Liz, did you have something to add to that?
That's exactly what I would say. I think that oftentimes we want, it's easier for us to say you don't accommodate, but also we have to think about what are we asking of them, right? So we have to quit pulling them into accommodations as well, which is really difficult and can be really hard. But yeah, and Chris's family support group is incredible. I refer everybody there. So definitely check it out because it's really, really good.
Absolutely. It's just about 8 o'clock. Real quick, I want to go around. I was going to say the room. Katie, I know we don't like to say New Year's resolution, so I want you to tee up what you like to say instead, and then we'll go around and kind of do that. So go ahead and tee it up.
Yeah, I'm not big on New Year's resolutions or even really the idea of goals, because I think that we check those things off or we X them out and are really mean to ourselves for not accomplishing them. I'm really big on compassionate commitments, which means we're making a commitment to ourselves and to those around us to do our best at something that will help us move closer to our values, but we're still going to be compassionate in the midst of that if it's not perfect. So for me, a compassionate commitment moving into 2023, I guess I haven't fully thought about mine. So this is a great thing for me to start thinking about. But it would be to be nicer to myself, which is something that I tell those I work with that they should do each and every day. A lot of you might be able to relate to this, that, and it's always strange to say publicly, I tend to hold myself to a significantly higher standard than everyone else, or than those around me, which I know many of you can probably relate to. And moving into 2023, I would compassionately like to commit to shift the way that I speak to myself, to shift the way that I view myself, and to try to talk to myself in a way that is how I would talk to those around me.
Thank you, Katie. Chris.
Yeah, so I thought we were going to talk about our New Year's resolutions next week, so I didn't plan one like Katie as well. But what I think for all of us, right? I think what I always want so badly, like one of my big dreams and one of my big goals, is to have us have a conversation about OCD in the public and people finally get it. And I think that that's one of the things that we all do on this live right now and what we do in our everyday lives. But what I always want to remind people watching is there is so much power in advocacy that doesn't need to be on the same level that all 6 of us do. So just telling a friend, educating a friend that makes an off comment, sharing an article with someone, posting something on a social media site if you feel confident or comfortable is just going to keep that conversation going. So I think one of the goals that I have this year is to help people that may not. We have some great IOCDF advocates that are doing huge things, but I think it's finding out ways to support people that may not be ready to be as front facing or as open, to find creative ways that they can help spread the conversation on what OCD really is in ways that they feel comfortable, because I think that there's so many more people that want to get involved and just don't know how. So if I can support, then I'll be there in any way I can.
That's awesome, Chris. Val.
Well, I think for me, and I've given this a little thought, only because of, like I said, with struggling myself during the last few weeks, I'm really going to concentrate on not judging or making a judgment of anyone, because our shoes are so different, and that I want people to know, as a Christian, to be known by my love. So that's a more conscious commitment that I've made to myself, but also to advocate, to step up my game, to step up my social media, to do what I can to bring more diversity, to the table, because we certainly have a foundation that's open and that's willing. So I'm determined to do my part within my own community to let them know we have a seat at the table. We're just not taking it. So that's kind of where I'm at this year, but more than anything, to be non-judgmental of anyone. That's what my OCD has taught me.
Thank you, Val. That's beautiful. I was going to turn to Liz. She disappeared. I was going to turn to Tom. He disappeared. Also, I'll go ahead and now my mom's calling. Anyway, so I'll quickly jump in here. Let's see. So my compassionate commitment to myself, I wasn't prepared to answer the question either. I think for me, I've started on a journey of consistency and balance, which is something that I struggle with. And I've started that journey this year, and I'd like to continue on in that journey next year. So it really allows me to serve the greater good when I do that, and serve this community, which is obviously a community that means everything to me. And so so for me, that's maintaining balance and consistency in my values and the things that are most important to me, which allow me to, work and do the things that we do in life, but also allow me to give the amount of time that I want to this community, advocating and doing all the things that are so important to all of us.
Eva, one thing I forgot. I'm committed to finishing my memoir this year. It's been like 10 years, and I have so much material. It's just setting my mind and setting that as a goal. So that's my goal, my big goal for myself.
I love that. Yeah, I have. I just got a text from Tom that said my computer literally waited until the last minute to blow up. It's a very strong word. We hope Tom is safe and okay.
I was thinking that too. We're all in this thread, and I have really bad vision.
Yeah, there's a difference between, it just died and my computer blew up. So stay tuned. If you want to know how Tom is, tune in next week to find out. Okay, so with all of that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending your Tuesday night with us, or no, your Wednesday night with us during the holidays. We really appreciate it, and it's our honor and privilege to be here with you as well. We are supporting one another. If Tom or Liz jump back on, we'll let them weigh in real quick. But thank you to the IOCDF and Amanda behind the scenes for being here for all of us. Well, that's very strange. Sorry,
Ethan, while you're trying to find it, I just want to say something real quick. Thank you, everybody, for the sweet comments. I was reading through them a second ago about Twitch. I really appreciate all those kind words. And one thing that I forgot to add when you asked that question, Ethan, is I think people like that who we've lost to a mental health related condition, I just want to say, like, that's also why the work is so important, is because I want to make sure that people like Twitch, their legacy doesn't kind of die with them, but just recognizing that we all got to make sure we're supporting each other with our mental health. So I just wanted to thank everybody.
Yeah, you got lots of love, Chris, as you should.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I felt the same way, Val. We could go on about this. I don't want to. I'll start another tangent conversation. So I'm gonna be good and stay focused. So Tuesday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern, you can join this same group, all of us, for starting the new year off on a right foot. We'll talk about some of our thoughts and suggestions and skills that we use in starting the year off, but also, of course, will mostly be Q&A. So if you didn't get your question answered, please join us this coming Tuesday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern. Also, camp registration is open. You can register now for this awesome event created for youth and OCD and their families. The program will include live sessions for parents, guardians, and opportunities for fun socialization with other families. You can register by visiting iocdf.org/camp. As you know, this live stream is one of many. You can see the entire schedule of future live streams at iocdf.org/peace of mind. And you can also subscribe and follow at the various social media platforms so you're notified when we go online. Also, if you ever need anything, please visit the IOCDF at iocdf.org. You can always email the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org. There you go. And with all of that, thank you so much for being here. Have a safe and happy New Year. And we'll see you next week. We look forward to seeing you. Have a great night. Good night.
Happy holidays,
Bye, everyone.